Hello, this is Zoe Guigueno joining us from Tofino, and she's going to be performing at Chez Monique this Saturday night coming up at 9 p.m. And we're really excited to have her. Haven't seen her since, she was knee-high to a grasshopper. And Zoe is going to be presenting material from her brand new album called Secret Admirer, which you recorded in Tofino, is that right?
I actually recorded it in Brooklyn.
Okay, well,
Um,
tell us all about it.
yeah, well, first of all, thanks. I'm really looking forward to playing, and it's so good to reconnect with you after all these years. But yeah, so I do live in Tofino, but I just moved here last fall. And for the past 7 years, I've been living in New York, where I've been working full time as a musician, mostly an upright bass player, gigging and touring with other bands. But I am also a songwriter, and so whenever I would be home from the road, I would go chip away at this album with my friend and producer Alex Spiegelman, who happened to live a 15-minute walk from my house, and his studio was right in between our two apartments.
Oh, hand.
It was so convenient that I was always late because my mind it took like negative 2 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, so the album it's primarily Alec and I playing all the instruments. We're both multi-instrumentalists and songwriters, and we both sing.
Mhm.
So we made a lot of it just the two of us. But then for certain songs, we brought in guests.
Okay. And so then tell us, what instruments are you playing on the album? So bass,
Um,
you're singing, of course,
yeah,
guitar.
yeah, and
and-
some piano and synth and a bit of percussion.
Okay. So what percussion instruments did you play on the album? I'm just curious, like it's just interesting.
Yeah, Alec and I would just, be working on a song and we'd be riffing on how the arrangement could go or what instruments we could include. And we'd just look around the studio and we'd grab a cowbell or a shaker or these wind chimes. On the first track, Bring Figs, you'll hear these wind chimes mixed in the beginning. Or, there was a drum kit, or we would just make things up. And then we would both be playing all the instruments because Alec also plays keys and guitar, and we didn't really keep track of what was what. So I think on the album credits it just says instruments performed by Zoe and Alec.
Miss him.
Sorry,
Sounds like you must miss him because you work together so much.
I miss him quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, because that's a real creative relationship. And then all of the other folks that you'd be working with in Brooklyn and in other places, you must really miss them.
I do. I do really miss them. But I'm also very keen to develop relationships here on Vancouver Island,
Of course.
which has been hard, obviously, because of the pandemic, obviously, but I'm really looking forward to,
Yeah, no, we're really
yeah.
having you. And so Zoe's going to be playing upright bass, electric bass, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, and singing.
Yeah.
This will be a solo show, which is the first time we've done a solo show, and first time I brought a folk artist into this room to perform. We've had Valdi in the past, and we talked about Valdi just a minute ago, and the intersection between jazz and folk music I find really interesting. Of course, you're not going to be presenting this as a jazz artist, but for those of us who listen to jazz or who perform jazz, I think it's interesting to listen to a song and try to imagine what I would do. Like I like to think what I would do with this, or how would I write this for a big band, And so you, as a jazz performer as well, I think you must be somewhat informed by your jazz education when it comes to then writing your songs. And actually, that's an interesting topic because so many of my students go on to be folk artists.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
You see a pattern of it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that the information that you get from all these sources informs your music and makes it more interesting for sure. Like, would you say?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I studied jazz in college, but in high school I was obsessed with. I had all these old jazz tapes, and um, it's absolutely informed my writing style. And
Yeah.
um, but I also I get it the other way around, where I hear jazz tunes and I try to figure out how I can play them on guitar, because I don't know how to really play jazz guitar. I don't know like all the jazz voicings and stuff. I'm like a little bit more limited. So I'm like playing jazz standards in kind of like a folky campfire kind of way
Yeah.
sometimes too. And it's just kind of all the same at its essence. You know, it's a song with,
Music is music.
yeah,
Good
exactly.
is something that I want to listen to. There are certain folk artists and country artists that stand out for me, but I'm interested in what stands out for you. So, in terms of folk or country artists, who do you really love other than Zoe Guigueno?
Other than myself. Um, well, let's see. Was Someone asked me this the other day, and the first name that came to mind is Randy Newman.
Oh, okay.
He's just one of my all-time favorite songwriters, lyricists. I love his satirical approach. I mean, not all his stuff is satirical, but um,
So maybe
he's kind of an example for me, as he's kind of a jazz artist too, but he's also, you could say some of it's folk, or I don't know what it's. He plays all kinds of styles.
the cheeky songwriting, maybe that's where that kind of comes from because your songwriting is a little cheeky.
It can be, yeah,
No, there's
yeah.
not, so I didn't hear satire, outright satire, but I heard quite a bit of irony and a little bit of cheekiness. So maybe that's where
Mm.
it comes from.
Yeah, I mean, I aspire to write something actually satirical, but like him, but I'm, yeah, not there. But I think, yeah, I do like to poke fun of myself for sure.
Well, I mean, it's always a good idea to poke fun at things sometimes,
Hmm.
especially, well, there's certain things that need to be poked fun at. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
And I'll leave it up to you and other people to decide how to do that.
Yeah.
Anybody else that pops into your head?
Yes, Jane Siberry, I'm a pretty
Oh,
big
yeah.
fan of.
Yeah.
Mary Margaret O'Hara is one of my favorite singers.
Oh, yeah. Hey.
Yeah. And I think what draws me to those artists is that they just lay it all out there, and they're just so themselves, and I see such courage in them.
Mhm.
They're very brave artists, I think.
Well,
I
this
mean,
is
especially Randy Newman, with some of the things he said, people get offended and they don't really understand, and it's just very like um, yeah, I'm trying to think of a way to say something without using swear words. It's not coming out.
Well, okay, well, giving an honest opinion is sometimes people sometimes aren't ready for that, are they? Right? Like to deliver in public, to deliver an honest opinion sometimes isn't really the thing to do. If you want to keep your friends or if you want to keep keep your professional associations.
That's something I think about a lot. Actually, yeah, there can be a lot of there's definitely risk of burning bridges.
Right. And so then it really comes down to the delivery, right? So like if you want to give your opinion, but do it in such a way that people can laugh at it, then maybe you'll keep all your friends and your associates. You know, it's not easy because as an artist, and I mean this is it, just in your songs, you are really giving yourself, right? Like you're putting yourself on display.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And that's kind of terrifying if you're not used to doing that. So as an artist, I think we have to. This is just what we're required to do if we want to be honest artists, right? I mean, there's a lot to that. Um, and then the next thing is that most people aren't ready to do that, right? So most people who do regular jobs, they can keep their private lives private and their public lives public. So there's a lot that's the difficult part about being an artist. I mean, I'm just, talking from the top of my head and trying to relate to what you're doing and then introduce it in such a way that people can relate to it, right? Like this is not the easiest thing to do in the world to actually just put yourself on public display.
No, it's not, especially as an introvert. It's kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah,
But
exactly. But it's beautiful. Your album is absolutely beautiful, and I love all of your songs. So the one that we did at Herman's, that one was called it was Power Stations, was it not?
radar stations.
Radar Stations.
Yeah.
That's right. And so I had this image of like each of two people as a radar station, each one is a radar station and sending signals to one another. That was the image that it brought into my head.
Mm.
There was a big key change, and so the key change was sort of like, okay, well, here's the other person. Uh,
Oh, cool.
this is just my interpretation of the song. I don't really know how you envisioned it, but I just felt like one key was one person and then the other key was the other person. And then the song was about how they were talking to one another.
Oh, I love that. I love to hear interpretations of
Well,
of my
that's,
lyrics. Yeah.
do you want to tell us a little bit about that song, for instance?
Sure. Back last April, I was just, just like the world had fallen apart. And like for me, everything for artists, I guess for me, like my whole calendar was just wiped out, and I was like,
Mhm.
no idea what was going on. Where was I? Could I keep living in the States? What's going to happen? What do I do? It just everything was so foggy that it was like you just couldn't see, a foot in front of you.
Mhm.
And then there happened to I was up in the mountains staying with a friend for a little bit, and there happened to be a very foggy day where that's actually what it was like outside. And I went out there, and my bare feet was just feeling the cool, damp grass under my feet, and couldn't really see anything. The house was sort of just there in the fog, and I was like, man, this is just such a unique moment in our lives right now,
Mhm.
where we really are just forced to stop and slow down. And um, I just, yeah, felt like I was getting, or maybe, I don't know, getting or sending out some kind of signal through the fog and just sort of waiting for a response. So it's interesting to me to hear you say that you thought of it as like two individuals, because I didn't. Yeah, I was thinking more just that we were all alone as our own radar station in the fog, trying to.
Right. But I mean, so we're all alone. Yeah. Okay. So here I am. I'm one radar station, and there's my signal going out, to the radar station of the universe, I guess, right? It could be that
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well,
yeah.
if you think of it that way. But somehow I got the idea that there were two entities involved in this thing. So, yeah, that's neat. Now tell us about getting almost stranded in Germany when the lockdown happened. So this was at the beginning of the pandemic last year, and you were touring at the time. Is that right?
Yeah, I was touring with a klezmer band around Germany, and things were kind of weird, but nothing was shut down yet. And so we were just going along doing our shows. And I was lying there in bed one night doing a crossword puzzle on my phone, and I got this news alert that Trump had announced a travel ban from the EU to the US effective in like 72 hours or something. So my American bandmates, I think, could have gotten back in after that cutoff time. But as a Canadian citizen, I wouldn't have been able to get back in. And it was just so confusing. There was just such upheaval. I mean, like, you called the airline and you get this message like, your estimated wait time is 7 hours and 30 minutes. I was like, oh my God. And then, like, there were no flights out of Berlin. And so we were looking in like all these other towns, like around Germany, to see how we could possibly leave. There were no flights into New York. So we flew to Boston. It all worked out in the end, but I was, I had some other friends in Europe messaging me like, "Oh, if you get stuck, you can come live with us in Belgium for a few months." I was like, maybe I'm just gonna live in Europe for the next year. It was
Yeah,
just, yeah, it was. We were all a bit panicked and just confused, like what is going on? But
it was really confusing. But so you made it back to New York. What did you do? You ran to the airport with your stuff.
well, we had to get a train down to Frankfurt and then stay overnight, and then we got on. I mean, I didn't believe any of this was happening until I was actually like on the plane and on the train.
Yeah.
So Frankfurt to Boston, then we rented a car and then we drove down.
Okay.
And
And
yeah,
so,
we got in just before the cutoff line.
and then you went back to New York where your apartment was. Do you still have the apartment in New York?
I gave up my place.
Yeah, you'd have to.
I just we none of us knew how long this pandemic was going to go on for, and I just couldn't hang on to it under the circumstances, so I gave it up.
Yeah, yeah. And so then you had to pack up all your things.
Yeah, I put most of my stuff out on the street. It was so weird. Like I couldn't, all the donation centers, thrift stores were closed, and I couldn't have people over to come to give away my stuff because no one could hang out indoors, and so that was pretty wild. Yeah, I just like 7 years worth of stuff and instruments and books and clothes and
Cool.
furniture and blah 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 blah, and I just
Just put it out on the street.
most of it. I mean, I gave a lot of it away to individual friends, be like, but most of it, yeah, I just put out or managed to sell a few things. But yeah, so that was yeah, very hectic and emotional.
Yeah. And so, okay,
Yeah.
you got rid of all your stuff, packed up your apartment, took what you could, got rid of the rest, and then flew to Tofino.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of a long story, but I spent some time in Souk first, where my parents live, and I spent some time on Main Island, where I grew up. I have
Mhm.
some good friends who were there. It's really hard to find a place in Tofino in the summer months, so the place I did find wasn't available till October, so I
You
didn't
had,
come directly here, but I'm here now. Yeah.
yeah, you had to hang around and wait a little bit until you could get a place.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, wow, what a an upheaval and what an adventure.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to be living out here right now. I mean, I always I always figured that I would move back to BC,
Mhm.
but I just didn't think it was gonna. I thought I had another 5 or 10 years in New York. I mean, I could, who knows, maybe I could move back, but I don't really think I will.
Mhm.
I think I'm here now and I'm here now.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's good for us. That's great for us. I mean, it's sort of like the pandemic boon is that it's brought so many touring musicians home.
Yeah, it's really something how much of a shift there's been. A lot of my other friends have done this too.
Yeah, you end up going back to your hometown kind of thing. You know,
Yeah.
from wherever that may be. Could it be New York or Barcelona? I don't know. Like so many musicians are in that same kind of situation.
Hmm.
Um, Now tell us a little bit about, because I just really want you to tell the listening audience about some of the gigs that you did do. Now on your Spotify page, it talks about that, what was it? The US State Department viewed you as a very, what was it? A very talented alien.
Yeah, I think I just love that's actually the visa that I have is an O1 for aliens of extraordinary ability,
Excellent.
which
Alien of extraordinary ability.
so that's how I was able to live in the States, legally, not as a permanent resident, but just as this extraordinary alien.
Very extraordinary. Lovely. And then it also talks about some gigs that you did in the touring, but also a gig with Steve Martin, who I just love. He's like one of the funniest, weirdest people. And Martin,
Yeah.
again, hilarious, like one of the funniest and brilliant people that I know. So tell us about that gig. Was it the same gig with the both of those two?
Yeah, so the two of them have a comedy show together. The name of it changes each year, but they've been having mostly kind of Americana bluegrass bands tour with them. So before I was doing it with my band Della May, there was a group called the Steep Canyon Rangers doing it. And anyway, I guess it was 2 years ago, something like that. So I used to play in this bluegrass group called Della May, and we did a lot of touring with the U.S. State Department that you just referenced. So we were going all over the world. But yeah, we got a call to come be part of the Steve Martin Short tour. And so I think that was, I guess, over 2019, we would go do little clusters of shows with them throughout the US. Um,
So fun.
it was a really incredible experience.
Did you get to meet them and know them a little bit?
Honestly, a little bit. It's not like we were hanging out with them every night, but we were working with them. We'd have sound check with them every day and work through the songs, and there'd be some joking around there and some getting. We would eat dinner with them sometimes, and there was one evening where we went and helped Steve Martin workshop a new tune he was writing, and that was such a treat.
Aha.
Um,
Is he really funny in person?
yes. Well, actually, he's kind of shy,
Yeah.
and sometimes won't really say much, but then he'll just like quietly make one little joke, and it's really funny. Whereas Martin Short will walk into a room just with his arms flung open and completely the opposite. Just he's always performing.
What an experience.
But while we're on the topic, the best thing about that experience for me was standing in the wings, watching the two of them workshop their own bits. They they have it's the same show that they were doing night after night, but they never ever just sat back and thought, okay, we got it down, it's good enough. They were every single day they were working to improve it,
Mhm.
going over it with a fine comb, like, okay, last night, like this joke, maybe we could change this one word. I think maybe the timing, can we try it a little bit differently? And they're just pinging ideas back and forth. And that was really impressive to me because to me their show was like, how could it be better? It was so funny, it was so polished, but they were still, at this point in their careers, just still treating it as if it was a work in progress and it could be better and it was evolving. And that was really, really inspiring.
So did they have like I'm actually curious. So did they have their shows worked out to the letter? Like they followed more or less the same script every time, or they had the whole thing scripted?
It was pretty much scripted, but there would be moments of improv. We'd always notice that because we hear the show every night. We're like, oh, they did it differently this time, or
Yeah.
um, so yeah, but then, as I said, like in the afternoons when they were working on it, they would tell the forget the name of the person who like takes care of this or changes the script on the little teleprompter screen, like, hey Emily, like, can you change this word or put this in or take that out, and then she would adjust it.
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, it was changing a little bit every night.
The stage manager, was that the stage manager then?
No, not the stage manager.
No.
The
So
script the script supervisor, I guess, or we
okay.
called her
Yeah, so
something
they're
like that.
interesting. That is really interesting to me that they would more or less keep exactly the same show down to the word with the odd, like just throw in that little improv bit here and there. So more or less like a musician would do it.
I guess so. Yeah, you have your arrangement, yeah, that you've
You're
worked on,
totally-
but
But they
there's
have
free,
their own hands, of course.
it's all yeah, and there's freedom within that, of course, and they're responding to the audience like you would as a musician.
Exactly. I love watching comedians live. Like I've worked with comedians myself, and I really love it. I just always love that interplay. Uh, and so I haven't myself been able to do it for a while. When I was working on ships, we did comedian shows, and what an experience that would have been to work with such great comedians. Well, we are truly honored to have you with us on Saturday night, and Chris and I are really looking forward to it. And
Me
so,
too.
yeah, so for our audience out there who've been watching and listening to this, Zoe's going to be playing Saturday, May 8th, starting at 9 p.m. here at Chez Monique. And so I hope you can tune in then. And we'll see you Saturday, Zoe.
All right, sounds good. See you
Okay,
Saturday.
bye now.